Good Thursday morning. Hey, everybody, what's going on? This is Jeremy coming at you once again with Redtired Podcast, and I'm joined by Old Faithful himself, Jacob Valdez. Good morning, Jacob.
Good morning. How are you doing today?
I'm great. In fact, we're getting kind of an early start today. Apparently, you wake up a little bit early on Thursdays. Is that right, or are you just trying to be different today?
I wake up whenever I wake up.
I wake up when I want to. It's the Redtired way.
Still trying to get over this cold, man. Ugh, I can't shake it off.
Well, it sounds like you're doing better. You actually don't sound like the Marlboro Man, which is a little bit disappointing, actually, because...
Yeah, I had to cut back to a pack of cigarettes a day instead of a carton.
Yeah, maybe you should start smoking again so you can get that deeper voice, that Barry White thing going.
Hello there, ladies.
Yeah, I know it'd shorten your lifespan a little bit, but I don't think that really matters.
Who has that deep voice?
Barry White.
Not Barry White. The other guy. Sam
Chef?
Elliott.
Who?
Sam Elliott.
Sam Elliott. I don't know.
From The Ranch.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. Names escape me for some reason, but when you put a movie or a TV show or something like that to it, it makes a lot more sense. Yeah, he's got one of those. I don't know, like I don't know quite how to explain it. It's like it's soft, but it's warm. It's almost one of those voices that I'm like, I even wouldn't mind cuddling with this guy. That's pretty.
That is hilarious.
Yeah, Sam Elliott, Barry White, Isaac Hayes. That's another one. Hello, children. Hey, Jeff. That one. Yeah, you should maybe you should take some singing lessons or something like that so you can get that inflection going so that when we get on the podcast, you're ready and rocking.
Oh yeah. Like don't drink nothing cold, no ice. Everything has to be the right temperature. Yeah, I learned all that in school.
Yeah. Oh, really? No ice?
Yeah, no. Anything cold is just really horrible for vocalists.
So you just drink
room temperature.
Room temperature water?
Everything. Even food
really
needs to be room temperature. If you're like a real like true to the heart vocalist, like if you're singing opera as a female, or even like today's like, or not today because they use a lot of autotune today and now these days in music, but like back in the day, like Mariah Carey days in the 90s or early 2000s, kind of like they used to do a lot of voice treatment and stuff to take care of themselves so they can continue on pushing through like shows, concerts, and stuff like that.
Well, and I've heard that things like hot tea and coffee can be really good for clearing out some of the junk in your throat. Mm-hmm. And, that's why a lot of people drink hot tea when they're sick, that kind of thing.
With whiskey and honey?
I don't know anything about whiskey. I've never had that in my life. I usually drink about 3 or 4 cups of coffee before we do this thing just so that I've got energy to push through. But
yeah,
I've also kind of noticed, well, really ever since we started this podcast, I've noticed that I've somehow found my voice. And yeah, so like if you go back and you listen to the very first Redtired podcast, I'm just kind of like, I'm here. and hell, now here I am kicking it off. What's up with that? You're supposed to be taking the reins on this thing, aren't you?
Yeah, just busy. Sorry. And I'm glad you're
here
to help me out here.
That's okay. I'll take the reins and I'll keep running with it because you know what? I don't mind. I enjoy this. And I certainly, more than anything, I enjoy bringing on all the different veterans that we've had on the podcast so far, from David to Kel to Bill.
Hold on one second.
Really?
Go ahead.
Jacob just got interrupted by his wife, and she's like a little cat just staring at him, waiting for something.
I know. So anyways, taxes.
Yeah, taxes. Taxes suck. Yeah. I've never been a huge fan of taxes. And
at least it's not like back in the day, they're knocking on the door. You kicks taxes?
I don't like taxes. Taxes, it's funny because the taxation thing, we founded this country on being anti-taxation. In fact, we turned an entire Boston Harbor into one giant cup of tea over taxation. And yeah, here we are, 200 I don't know the math off the top of my head, 227 years later. I don't know. Some 220 odd years later. And we're not so opposed to taxes. In fact, a lot of people have this perspective like, I don't think the rich pay their fair share. What are your thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm. Well, tax has been in our civilization for a long time. I think the first known system of taxation was back in ancient Egypt, I think. And this is, they just found this out like 3000. It was happening around 3000 BC in the first dynasty of Egypt. So, and even then, there were complaints about the wealthy, the pharaohs, little minions or whatever, weren't paying their fair share as well. Because, again, we don't know. I honestly think that the tax bracket is where it should be. And to be honest, with today's laws and today's internet, there should be no excuse in why people are overpaying in taxes, because there's so many, like we talked about yesterday, with exemptions when it comes to property tax, or even now, if you want to spend the extra amount of money, if you just don't want to learn anything, there's professionals that their main purpose is to shelter your money.
And a lot of them are worth every penny that they charge. Now, one of the things that lit a fire under my butt when it came to taxation was it used to be that we didn't have to pay any taxes whenever you purchase something online. And then the politicians got involved and they realized, like, we're missing out on all this money. So we got to get involved and make sure that we get ours. And
matter of fact, I think taxation was even in the Bible in Genesis, wasn't it?
Well, not in Genesis. I know that Jesus talked a lot about taxation. And specifically, one of the things that he said was, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and unto God what is God's. So, I mean, it could be legitimately justified that Jesus said that, taxes aren't all that bad. Or, you can justify it from however you want to, just basically by reading that scripture. Like, oh, Jesus didn't have a problem with taxes, which I would counter as complete horseshit. And because he also had a huge problem with the money changers in the temple. Matter of fact, that story goes, he saw what was going on in the temple and that people were being excessively taxed and ripped off. And so he walked away, took the time to go braid a whip, and then went back into the temple and started whipping some legitimate ass. And so you could argue for that, biblically, either way. Taxation is good, taxation is bad. Personally speaking, I think taxation is a complete load of crap. And so I do everything that I can to avoid it, because that's my true civic duty, is to make sure that the government doesn't get any more of my money than they have to. So.
Oh, yeah. And also, I think with economic effects and growth, especially when it comes to the lower income groups, that tax cuts and lower percentage of taxes or no taxes at all is actually a greatest positive impact on employment growth and just economic growth in general for our country.
Yeah, there's evidence to suggest all over the place that when taxes are cut, the federal government actually makes more money. And there's a Laffer curve that goes right along with that. You can Google it. It's not terribly difficult to find, but there's a fine line over where just enough taxation creates more money taken in through taxes. Because when you lower the tax burden on people, they can hire more people, right? So if you lower a corporate tax, for example, then that company does things like what Walmart did with what was it? 3 years ago now, when Trump was elected. Or two.
Yeah, it was about 3.
Yeah, it was a little less than 3, but Walmart did this thing where, hey, taxes went down. Let's give our employees a bonus. Freaking Walmart. And everybody bitches about Walmart, right? They're
not the poor employer that doesn't take care of their employees.
Yeah, I don't make enough money. Yeah, like if you're working at Walmart and you're making $10 or $11 an hour, you're doing pretty good. That's pretty amazing. That's a retail entry-level job. The requirements of that job are breathing and following instructions. That's it. That's a pretty good payday for working at Walmart. And I would never, ever wish that anybody work at Walmart. That place sucks. I did it for 3 months when I got out of the military. Worst 3 months of my life. Totally different story. So anyway, let's break this taxation thing down, because there's a lot of misunderstanding. And now I got to probably say this. I am not a tax expert. Do not take advice from a so-called podcast or YouTuber or whatever. If you're taking tax advice from me, you're a moron. So do your own due diligence. Hire somebody who knows
Now,
what
when
they're
we're
doing.
talking about taxes, are you talking like income tax, like the federal income
I'm talking
tax,
about
or
taxes
are
all
you-
around, but what I'm gonna tackle specifically today is the federal level taxes that everybody has to deal with, and
Yeah.
tax
And
brackets.
just before you even start, I just want to give the listeners a reminder that our country was founded on, protests against the British taxation policy of 1760. So in which the American Revolution was, we fought for no taxes, so it's not okay. I agree with Jeremy. I think taxes is horrible. If I was alive back in 1913 when the 16th Amendment was ratified, which, permanently legalized an income tax, I think I'd be upset,
No question, there should have been some politicians that hung that year, but apparently we were just as much pansy generation back then as I don't know. I mean, they're supposed to be like one of the toughest generations, but
yeah. And I think it should have been like how we did in the Civil War, and during wartime, before the 16th Amendment, was temporarily have it to pay for military operations or for the defense of our country. They had they imposed like an income tax briefly during like the Civil War. I think it was even before then. I think it was the Battle of 1812. But when they permanently legalized it, that's not when I know, as a citizen, that it was not okay.
yeah, there was also several different methodologies for funding wars, such as war bonds. That was a really big one. Go buy war bonds. There was advertisements for that all the time, and I mean, it had to be funded. And now I already know there's going to be some jackass that's going to say something like, "Well, but then we wouldn't have roads if we didn't have taxes." Shut up. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life.
We had roads in the 1900s before 1913. We had roads in the 1800s.
Roads go far, far, far back. Back when they were beaten paths. That was the road, was the path. And somehow we didn't have to manage or maintain those roads, but now we have to, because we run at 70, 75, 80 miles an hour, what have you. But there's some justification for taxation. I don't see much of it, but let's get into this, because we're already 15 minutes into the podcast and y'all have learned nothing. So all my sources are going to be cited down below. You're welcome, Mike. So let's talk about the income tax that we deal with. Okay. So I've heard one thing said multiple times in the past, and it's like, well, you got to be careful. You don't want to make too much money. You'll bump yourself up into the next bracket. Okay. Let's address that. Being bumped up into the next bracket is not a terrible thing. Yes, they're going to tax you a little bit more, but the common misunderstanding is the more you make, the more that they take. That's not exactly how this works.
Wrong.
What we have is actually called a progressive tax. Okay, so a federal income tax. These rates, they're taxable income, and a progressive tax basically means that as your income increases, it's taxed at a higher rate. It doesn't mean, so if I make $200,000 this year, I'm going to be taxed at 20% rather than last year where I only made $100,000 and I'm only taxed at 12%. No, it's not across the board. The way it works, and I've got these tax brackets, and I've even got updated tax brackets. They're going to be going into effect this year, or 2021, excuse me, or 2024, 2021. I think that's how it works. But the way that these brackets are broken down, I've got them right in front of me. Okay. So for a married couple filing jointly, if you make $19,050 or under, your effective marginal tax rate is 10%. Okay. So if you go over that 19,050, everything above that goes to 12%. So if you make, say, $20,050 that year, well, first of all, you need to find a better job. But second of all, your effective tax rate on the first $19,050 is 10%. And then that additional $1,000 that you made gets taxed at 12%. And it works that way all the way up to $77,400 over the old tax brackets, of course. These are not the updated ones. These are still in effect for this filing year. You get taxed 12% all the way up to the 77,000 range, 77,400. Once you cross 77,400, if you make $77,401, well, that $1 gets taxed at 22%. When you look at this, and the whole chart is available, it's at taxpolicycenter.org. When you look at this, you start to kind of understand, like, oh, so this whole argument of the rich not paying their fair share is actually completely false, according to a progressive tax system. So does that make sense at all? No, that doesn't make sense to you? Aren't you a numbers guy?
Just giving you a hard time.
Either that or you're Googling porn again while I'm doing this damn work. Anyway, so here's how the Tax Policy Center breaks this down. The basics of a progressive income tax rate. Each tax rate applies only to income in a specific tax bracket. Thus, if a taxpayer earns enough to reach a new bracket with a higher tax rate, his or her total income is not taxed at that rate, just the income in that bracket. Even a taxpayer in the top bracket has some portion of income taxed at lower rates in the tax schedule. Jacob, would you do me a favor real quick? Would you Google the last year's salary for Jeff Bezos while I finish reading this? For example, a single filer with $50,000 in taxable income falls into the 22% bracket, but they do not pay a tax of $11,000 or 22% on that $50,000. Instead, he or she pays 10% of the $9,525 plus 12% of $29,175 plus 22% of $11,300 for a total tax bill of $6,939.50.
Jeff Bezos made $81,840 last year.
Okay, so Jeff Bezos, the world's
richest man.
Well, I mean, it changes every day, but we'll assume for the time being, one of the world's richest men, pulled in a salary of, what was it, $81,000?
Yep.
Okay, $81,000, effectively placing him into a 24% tax bracket. Well, correction. No, that's correct, because he'll probably be filing single this year, considering he just got divorced, right? So yep. I stand corrected on that. His taxable income, anything over $82,500 will be taxed at 24%. So he came in just under that at 22%. So Jeff Bezos will pay 10% on $9,525. He'll pay 12% on $38,700, and he'll pay 22% on the up to $82,500. So Jeff Bezos is actually a very, very smart man when it comes to avoiding taxes, because he figured out, like, this is all I need. I'll just leave the rest sheltered.
And investments, things that are just even Roth IRAs, when you do that's how you can shelter your money as a retirement.
Or Amazon stock.
Yep.
Because currently you cannot tax somebody just because they own stock. This is where the dangers of, say, an Elizabeth Warren presidency comes into play, because she wants to tax people based on what they have. Kind of like the one that we talked about yesterday, where, hey, people have gold, so therefore we need to tax them on that property. So Elizabeth Warren wants to treat stocks like it's a property. The danger of that is he has to sell those stocks because he only took a salary of $81,000 last year. And for him to sell off a bunch of stock in order to pay for the taxes, that creates a massive order in the market, causing the stock to reduce, losing value. And he actually becomes poorer because the federal government wants more money from him. It's kind of scary. All right. So it's confusing, but your income is broken down into sections, and each bracket only taxes up to a certain amount. So there is, again, like I said, there's an updated version of all of this, and it's in the description. All right. So we have this progressive tax system, and I don't why they call it progressive is probably because it's punishing people for making more money. That's the way it appears to me. The progressive tax has in other words, it has a more of a financial impact on higher income individuals and businesses than it does on lower income earners. So a marginal tax rate, so we hear this one all the time, right? The marginal tax rate it's basically the same thing. It's progressive tax, is marginal tax. It's a tax rate which is tax that is incurred on an additional dollar of income in the United States. The federal marginal tax rate for an individual will increase as income rises. So same thing, progressive, marginal, blah, blah, blah. So historically, you hear this argument all the time where people say, well, you know, in the 50s, we had the top marginal tax rate was 90%. You've heard that, right? That's a common argument from our darling little moron AOC.
I hate AOC.
So let's address the top 90% marginal tax rate. Okay, there's a chart. I included it here for you so you can follow along. I don't know if you're even.
No, I'm looking at it.
Okay, are you?
I'm looking at that and other tax stuff.
Okay, good. So as you can see, the early taxation started off super low, and then, oh my gosh, did it bounce up hard. The top marginal tax rate just pre-1920 was almost 80%. And then it dropped down massively when the market crashed. And then you follow along to mid-40s and late through the 60s, and the top marginal tax rate was at 90%. That sounds like a huge tax, okay? But we got to remember that marginal and progressive mean the same thing. So in other words, the 91% bracket of the 1950s, basically it only applied to households with income over $200,000 or about $2 million in today's current dollar worth. Only a small number of taxpayers would have actually had enough income to fall into that top bracket, which was fewer than 10,000 households, according to an article in the Wall Street Journal. Many households in the top 1% in the 1950s probably did not fall into the 91% bracket to begin with. So when you tout a 90% marginal tax rate as if it's such a wonderful idea, you got to remember most people will never be affected by a 90% marginal tax rate. The good majority of people won't. This won't apply to somebody who works at Walmart as a greeter. So even among the households that did fall into the 91% bracket, the majority of their income was not necessarily subject to that top bracket. After all, the 91% bracket only applied to income over the $200,000 threshold, not to every single dollar earned by households. Finally, it's very likely that the existence of a 91% bracket led to significant tax avoidance and lower reported income. There are many studies that show that. As marginal tax rates rise, income reported by taxpayers goes down. As a result, the existence of the 91% tax bracket did not necessarily lead to significantly higher revenue collections from the top 1%. In other words, if you're going to offer up a marginal tax rate that goes astronomically high, that's the action. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Am I correct? Yep. So the equal and opposite reaction is people who are wise with their money and have built a portfolio or have built their money up. They're going to move it. They're going to shelter it. They're going to pay a killer tax man to make sure that they don't get taxed above that marginal tax rate. Because to them, it's an unethical move. I worked hard for this extra money. I built something amazing, and you're going to punish me for it. Your take?
No, and also a lot of people don't understand when it comes to when you see the top 1% wealth, they always look at the net worth. And necessarily net worth doesn't mean liquid, which I mean they have that kind of cash on hand, like physically cash in their checking or and savings account.
Right. Scrooge McDuck swimming in the coins.
Yeah, exactly. So all this is like we said before is in either investments or right. Most of these entrepreneurs, and the reason why they're billionaires, they throw it back in their company.
It's called reinvestment,
which means more jobs.
People can, kind of complain and moan and gripe about the situation at Amazon. Well, it's it's a difficult place to work, or we're not being treated fairly or whatever. I don't work at Amazon, so I mean, I'm not going to just take this anecdotal information as gospel. But what I will say is if Jeff Bezos started getting taxed to the degree that an Elizabeth Warren would like to tax him, Amazon stock taking a hit is certainly going to lead to job regression. Many of you will lose your jobs in the event of an Elizabeth Warren presidency, or God, far worse, an Amazon union gets put in place. I mean, we can at least outgrow an Elizabeth Warren presidency, but there's no way you can outgrow once a union's there. I mean, they're difficult to kill without moving jobs overseas.
Yeah. And most of the time they do that, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's the reality. So one of the things that I wanted to bring to light is there's a couple of ways that you can protect some of your money as well. One of the things that my brother sent to me not too long now, my brother, preface this a little bit, he works for a business that's owned by an accountant. The accountant does not do just accounting, but the business that my brother runs is a security company. And my brother was going over some of his taxes for the year and trying to figure out if, what's going to happen. And so he sat down with his employer, the accountant, and says, it's looking like I'm going to get bumped up into this next tax bracket, and I don't want my income to be taxed at that level. And so that's kind of what spurred this whole thing in the first place. So he sent me some information from the accountant. And one of the things that my brother's going to do is he's going to open up what's called a health savings account, an HSA. And the reason he's going to do this is because it helps to shelter his income. So you take, for example, Jacob, I make $52,000 this year, right? Not real numbers, just throwing this out there. So if I go back to my brackets and I look at my tax brackets at $52,000 as a single man, which is what he is. He's a single man. He's looking at getting taxed pretty heavily in that third bracket for 22% because he's making over $38,000. So approximately $14,000 is going to get taxed at 22%. 22% is nothing to balk at. That's a good chunk of money. Now, in order to shelter some of my money, if I'm this guy, I've got $52,000 that I made this year. I'm going to take as much of it as I possibly can, and I'm going to put it into other places, i.e. a Roth IRA, a health savings account. Now, there's limits to all this stuff that I can contribute, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But by moving some of my post-tax dollars out of my income and into an HSA, it lowers my tax burden. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So because the government doesn't want to avoid, not getting more out of you. I mean, they're basically breastfeeding on you at this point. They don't like the fact that you can move your money around and lower your tax burden because that affects the budget. So there are limits. You can only contribute up to $6,000 into a Roth IRA. You can only contribute, I don't have the exact numbers right in front of me at the second, but there's only a set amount that you can contribute to a health savings account. Now, that being said, let's go into the health savings account. An HSA. so I'm going to refer to it from this point forward, is a tax-exempt trust or a custodial account that you set up with a qualified HSA trustee, i.e. a money guy, to pay or reimburse certain medical expenses that you incur. This is something that we should probably look at, considering Obamacare completely ruined insurance. So you must be eligible. You must be an eligible individual to qualify for an HSA. No permissions or authorizations from the IRS is necessary to establish an HSA, but you set up an HSA with a trustee. Qualified HSA trustee can be a bank, an insurance company, or anyone already approved by the IRS to be a trustee of an individual retirement arrangement, IRAs, or Archer MSAs. The HSA can be established through a trustee that is different from your health plan provider. Your employer may already have an HSA in effect. If you have an Archer MSA, you can generally roll it over into an HSA and avoid taxes. So some of the benefits of this HSA is you may enjoy some of the benefits that you may enjoy from an HSA of this. You can claim a tax deduction for contributions that you or someone other than your employer make to your HSA, even if you don't itemize your deductions on the 1040 Schedule A, blah, 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 tax forms, boring stuff. Contributions to your HSA may be made by your employer, including contributions made through a cafeteria plan. They may be excluded from your gross income, lowering your tax burden. The interest of other earnings on the assets in the account are tax-free. Okay, this is a big one because we talk about the Roth IRA a lot. The Roth IRA, all the interest, everything that grows in that account is tax-free, which is huge when you're retired. So imagine having put $6,000 a year into an IRA from the age of 20 to the age of 40 and then just never done anything with it. And then when you retire, you've got like $1.5 million, or depending on how you invested, $2 million or whatever. And you can just sit back and live off of the interest out of that Roth IRA, and the government can't take taxes from it. It's gone. Those dollars have already been taxed. That's the beauty of the Roth. That's also the beauty of an HSA. The contributions remain in your account until you use them. The interest or the other earnings on the assets in the account are tax-free. Distributions may be tax-free if you pay qualified medical expenses. So there's a laundry list of medical expenses that qualify. And so this is kind of like the downside where the HSA kind of bugs me a little bit, but I would rather have some money set away in case there's some crazy crap that goes down and, God forbid I contracted cancer or something along those lines. And for whatever reason, my health insurance just was like, you still have to pay your deductible. And some people have deductibles are like, what, $6,000, $7,000 now. So
yeah,
having an HSA in place that's growing tax-free can really help to protect your assets in the event of a serious illness or an injury. Go check out that laundry list. The links are in the description. It's a lot. More benefits. An HSA is portable. So this is a big one. It stays with you if you change employers or if you leave the workforce. So qualifying for an HSA to be an eligible individual and qualify for an HSA, you must meet the following requirements. You're covered by a high deductible health plan, further which they refer to as HDHP, described later on the first day of the month. So if you've got a high deductible health plan, the HSA can help offset that deductible. You have no other health coverage except what is permitted under other health coverages. Again, go into it and read all this stuff because it's a lot. If you aren't enrolled in Medicare, you can't be claimed as a dependent on somebody else's 2018 tax return. These are all qualifying scenarios. So you can put this money into this HSA, right? And it'll grow. It'll I mean, it's like the Roth IRA where you just keep the money just keeps building up and building up. It's almost like the dividend reinvestment keeps taking place. Does that make sense so far?
Yep.
Okay, so said all that to say this. If you're paying way too much in taxes, it's because you've made a choice to do just that. There are tons and tons of ways that you can get around paying excess taxation. We talk about another one that we talked about yesterday. We talked about, I think it was yesterday, we talked about we talked about property taxes, right? So with property taxes, there's a certain amount of money that you don't have to pay as long as you go in and file for certain exemptions. One of the big ones that we have here that everybody should be taking advantage of is the homestead exemption. You get a tax break just for living in the damn house.
Yep.
So all you got to do is go down there and say, yeah, I want to file a homestead exemption on my home. Now, of course, you have to own the home. Jacob, you can't do it. You're renting an apartment. So if you went to the county and you said, I'd like a homestead exemption, they'd laugh you out the door.
Idiot, stupid Mexican.
Okay, that went a direction.
Get out of here, brown guy. You don't belong in this.
I really didn't see it going that direction, but okay.
I do get that look sometimes when they figure out I'm smarter than what I look like, and they're like, "Oh
my
this
gosh,
guy knows what he's talking about."
Dang it! Yeah,
can't get one over on him.
They, I remember when I was disabled by the VA, actually, and this is one that we've talked about in the past as well. I went into my county appraisal and I said, yeah, I just got this letter. They've officially disabled me at this rate, and I'm going to go ahead and need to file an exemption on this and get my discount. And of course, the lady who was working at the front counter, she was completely oblivious, had no idea what I was talking about, didn't have a clue that veterans have exemptions based on their disability. And of course, started typing into the computers. I'm not finding that. I'm not really understanding that. I don't know. Let me ask somebody. So, of course, she leans over and asks the lady right next to her. And the lady right next to her is like, yeah, I think I've heard something about that, but I'm not really sure how it works. I was in there for 15 minutes, and then they finally decide, like, okay, let's just go talk to the assessor. Like, you guys are really making me jump through some of these hoops to be able to get my my property taxes down. You just don't like not getting my money, do you? So I went in and I actually spoke with the assessor face to face. She knew exactly what I was talking about. She's like, oh yeah, that's no problem. Do you need a letter for your bank so that they can lower your mortgage payment? Like, yeah, that'd be great. So got an official notarized letter there within 5 minutes. The actual assessor knows what the hell is going on, but the people that are working at the front counter, you don't just take no for an answer, because a lot of times they just don't know.
Yeah.
Now, contrary to that, the county that I live in now is very impressive when it comes to this process. I thought that the rules applied similar or in a similar manner when I moved to this county that I'm living in. And so one of the things that I assumed was, well, I just bought the house, so I have to wait until the next fiscal year to be able to file for my exemption. And I ended up paying taxes all that year, somewhere to the tune of around $3,000, just a little bit over, I think. And I went in at the beginning of the fiscal year and I said, yeah, I just need to file my exemption. And she said, well, why didn't you come in when you bought the house in the first place? And I said, well, and I didn't know I could do that. In the last county that I lived in, they made me wait until the beginning of the fiscal year before I could file. And she goes, oh, no. We don't do it like that here. Let me see your paperwork. Goes back to the computer. Yeah.
I like your typing noises.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate the feedback. And she says, yeah, you could have brought that in the day that you bought the house and we could have filed right then and there. And then she goes, this blew my mind. This lady is by far the best government worker I've ever encountered in my life. She goes, hang on one second. Let me go back and see if we can't cut you a refund check. Whoa. Really? Okay, I'll wait right here. I'm like a dog waiting for a car to change.
You're giving me money. The government's giving me money.
I get my money back. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And so she goes back, has a talk with the assessor. She's gone for like 2 minutes. It was no time at all. And she comes back and she goes, okay, we're going to go ahead and issue the check out. It has to go back to your bank so they can then issue the refund to you. Unfortunately, because it's a mortgage, it is a convoluted process, but you will get your money back. And that's exactly what happened. Within 2 weeks, I had all my money back. And you know what I did with my money, Jacob? Can you guess? Can you guess? Can you guess?
You invested it so you don't have to pay taxes on it.
No, I paid my mortgage down like a genius. There you go. There's a lot of different ways that you can utilize the rules and the laws and everything set in stone. And HSAs and IRAs, they're just scratching the surface. If you're somebody that's making greater than $50,000 a year, I'd suggest maybe you go and interview a couple of different money guys, maybe some people who do taxes for a living. Get a good quality accountant and, pay the extra money for him to do your taxes the right way. Unless you're talking about just maybe taking a standard deduction and you're just fine with that. Okay, fine. I'm not going to pick on you for that. TurboTax is easy. It's relatively cheap. I think if you do a standard deduction, it might even be free.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know for sure, but taxation is a terrible, terrible thing. We hate talking about it. We hate the fact that you have to deal with it. We hate paying taxes ourselves. And I encourage you to lower your tax burden as much as you possibly can and make sure that you keep more of your money. So that's
before we end it,
I'm not ending it. I still got time.
No, but one thing I would like to bring up is that this is for federal level only. Like, if you live outside the state of Texas, I'm sorry, but
you're wrong.
There's 43 states that do charge income tax. So please look into your local state government website to see how, and also talk to a tax professional that is professional and licensed for your state of doing taxes, because it's totally different between the federal and state level. State level might have their own percentages and for state citizens. So again, do your research, make sure to keep as much. You work hard for it.
Yeah. It's yours.
Like you want to keep it as much as possible.
Everybody who works hard should keep their own money. And I maintain that from the bottom level, entry level worker, all the way up to the Fortune 500 CEO. That's your money. You earned it. You negotiated for it. Your labor and your time were exchanged for it. So tell me, why is it then that it's okay that the government gets a chunk of it because they didn't do any of the work? Do they really provide all that much for what you're taxed? Really?
I don't know. And it sucks too, because sometimes, not sometimes, most of the time, a lot of people just go straight into their H&R Block, pay, and not even care. They just do a simple 1040 and that's it. And they pay the max. They don't know anything. They don't get educated correctly. And it sucks because they're just throwing money away. And so most people, especially for middle class and below, they do get a tax return. But that's not the point. The point is to not pay as much. And everyone, when the tax season comes, they, especially the lower middle class, they just see a large chunk of money coming to them for the tax return. And that shouldn't be it. You shouldn't be worrying about all that. You should be worrying about, how much money should I be saving? Because do you honestly think that these people that are wealthy and stuff like that, some of the most wealthiest people get tax returns still, because they still know how to do the system. They are educated, and knowledge is power, and knowledge equals freedom. So you're not really enjoying your full benefits as American citizen and enjoying your freedoms when you start doing your homework, basically, and just figuring out, okay, you know what, I might pay a little bit more than H&R Block if I go to an actual professional guy that knows what he's doing, knows how to take care of me and my money, and be like, okay, I'm not only getting tax return, but man, I'm paying a lot less than I thought I would.
A lot of times that guy actually, he justifies his costs when he offsets your tax burden. And now an accountant's not appropriate for everybody. If you're married and you're filing jointly and you only made $40,000 last year, dude, go ahead and do the simple deduction. Go ahead and take this. I mean, do the TurboTax if you want to, or H&R Block if you want to. But like, if you're working your butt off this year and you made 70, 80, $90,000 a year, it might be time to actually consider doing a tax man. I don't have to, because so much of my income is actually non-taxable. It doesn't really affect me. You know, any kind of VA out payment. This is something might piss some of these liberals off, but when you get paid from the VA, that's non-taxable, baby.
Yep.
Zero.
No, and what sucks too is and not one time, and you're gonna notice this, listeners, and starting December at the latest, and it's just not Christmas commercials. It's people blasting the commercials of go to your nearest tax office, go here and that, or you'll get the car lots. Everyone to get your money.
Oh
But
man,
none of those commercials are about you keeping and saving and investing your money. So do not get caught up on like, well, you can get your tax return the next day and blah blah, or put it down towards whatever. And it's probably towards an investment that goes against my policy of which is rust, rots, or depreciates. It's not something that's going to make you money in the long run or give you a high return. And so do not get caught up in this consumerism that America is all about right now. Just don't ignore it. And when April, or was it March, is I think when most of the
filing date is April 15th. Yeah, you hit something right on the, you hit a nail right on the head. There are car lots out there that will do your taxes for you for free and then take it as a down payment. All you got to do is buy a car. And that's probably one of the dumbest things you can do, because they know exactly what you're working with financially speaking. And it's no secret anyways, but if you're going to a car lot and you're getting your taxes done in a car lot, you might as well be taking diet advice from a McDonald's employee too.
Yeah.
There's no difference.
Just give it here. I'll keep your money.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Here's the argument though. Well, but I deserve.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. I work so hard.
You know what? Hey, we work hard.
So did everyone else.
Show me. Yeah, the good majority of people actually do work their butts off. They really do work hard. And, you know, with us building a podcast, it's no different. You know how much we got paid from Redtired this year? Boom. Zero. You know why we do this? It's not for money. That's obvious. Although, you know, I wouldn't be totally opposed to somebody coming in and buying a little bit of airtime, but that's a different story. Don't.
No, but we're here to help you, and we're here to turn that, and instead of turning it into a car that you're going to pay more money in, and by the time you're done paying it off, it's going to be worth the amount that you should have got back on your return to begin with, which is that $3,000, $4,000 by the time you're done paying that 6 year. I think even now, which I think it's ridiculous, you can finance the car up to 10 years now.
Really?
You're an idiot if you do that. Oh yeah, dude. I saw it when I went to go buy my wife's car. You know, we went to go. He was like, "Are you sure we could go all the way back to 10 years?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm buying it cash."
No way.
Yeah.
Here's another one that I've heard, and he's probably gonna call me out on this but a friend of mine is telling me, well, yeah, I know people who've gone to the car lot and they got a 0 interest loan. I'm like, well, that's great, but they paid full price. Well, yeah, but it's 0 interest. I'm like, yeah, but they paid full price. The depreciation of the car, as soon as you drive it off the lot, you've lost. Bam, right there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but they're not paying any interest because you paid full price. You financed it through the people that built it. They made their money off of you already. Okay, and you can call me on this one later. I won't drop your name, but you know who you are. You're hearing this right now. You're probably laughing while you're driving down the road in your old Dodge because you know that I'm right on this one. He doesn't do this, by the way, but it was a friend or a family member that had done that and said, well, you know, I don't have to pay any interest, so I'm going to need a new vehicle, whatever. It's whatever. I'm like, you should probably stay away from that person.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. The cars, I mean, what's the guy right next to you at the red light really thinking? Is he really thinking like, oh, that's a nice Ford he's got? Or is he thinking, I bet
You're
your
an
payments
idiot.
are $700 a month, you moron. Meanwhile, and I make decent money. I am not complaining at all, but you know what? I still drive a 13-year-old car. I have no qualms whatsoever in driving a 13-year-old Toyota because I know it'll run till the wheels fall off, baby.
And here it is. I love nice cars, and
Cough, fake Mercedes.
I know, but and I always say, oh man, my favorite car I've always wanted when I was a kid. I don't know why, and I still do, is a Maserati. But the day you see me driving it, it was the day I bought it straight out cash.
Well, we're going to have to get this podcast a lot bigger for you to have a Maserati.
Yeah.
You walk in there. How much is that car? Well, we can get you I didn't ask about financing. I said, how much is the car?
Yeah.
Well, sir, you can't afford that car. Well, the joke's on you.
I know we're digressed a little bit, and I want to end this podcast in kind of a lighter light. But what's crazy is that when what's insane is that when you purchase a major purchase like that, they're still required to run a credit report to make sure you're not making it up, that you are what you are in the net worth.
Really? Is that now that's got to be at the bigger guys, because the last car that I purchased was from a small lot.
No, I'm talking about main dealerships to protect their assets, to make sure that the check you're writing is not going to bounce or stuff like that.
I see.
They look brown like me, they're going to be like, whoa, this guy does not have this amount of money. Look at his skin.
Yeah. Here we go again. Jacob's Mexican, everybody. Now there's another thing that the car dealers they absolutely hate is when you walk in there and you're already pre-approved through a bank, because one of the things that they do to
the finance guy just locked out. He's like,
because he misses out on commission for running your credit time and time and time again, and they'll shotgun your credit and they'll make a commission off of every one of those little credit checks, and it's terrible for the consumer. But and I piss them off every time I've done this. And I've walked in and I've said, well, I'm interested in that vehicle right there. I already know what I want. I've done my research on it. I've done my homework on it. I already know what I'm going in there for. And I know how much money I can spend. I walk in there with a pre-approval, with a check, and they're like, "Are you? Well, but we, how? Okay, fine."
I guess
car salesmen hate me because I don't. You just. Oh my gosh! And matter of fact, one of these days, I want to get Bobby to come on and downtown Bobby Brown, and he's going to tell you about how he does car salesman, because his method is awesome and they hate him.
Yeah.
So there's an idea.
Just leave me alone. Episode. Just give me the keys.
Leave me alone. Give me the keys. Here's some money. Go away. I mean, and he will argue and fight and piss them off until they give him exactly what he wants. And I love it. I think it's hilarious.
Yeah, we should get him on the episode.
Yeah, well, we're due. I talked to him last night. Downtown Bobby Brown needs to be coming back on Redtired here pretty soon. So, Bobby, I know you're listening. Let's get this thing going.
Yep.
What are you waiting for? Come on.
Probably to do push-ups.
I still have 5 minutes left. Dang it. All right, everybody. That's it for today's episode. Thanks again for listening to Redtired Podcast. Oh, and before I forget, I almost forgot about this, Jacob. This was huge. Yesterday, we crossed the threshold. We've got 1,500 downloads worldwide. We're moving on already. Can you believe
1,500 idiots. No,
and it just went down.
Joking, guys. Thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate it. We do put a lot of work into these, and I know it's been a little political lately, but I promise you, we just right now it's just getting crazy. We want to protect you and making wrong decisions.
I don't care if it's political. You get over it. Hey, people People love politics. They do. And there's nothing that people love more than somebody agreeing with them on it. So, I mean, hey, no apologies. If you don't like politics, that's okay. We can always talk about other stuff too. I have no problem talking about other stuff, but we got to get to a point where the news cycles are actually not just repeating Trump, 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 Trump. So we want to talk about stuff that helps you grow. We want to talk about stuff that helps you be a better person. And unfortunately, understanding taxation is one of those topics. So I hope you got a little bit out of this today. Look forward to the future episode with Downtown Bobby Brown when we start talking about car dealerships and how he handles these guys. Jacob, is there anything else you'd like to add today?
No, I do not. Again, thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a great day.
1,500. 1,500 downloads. You know what? I got something. I got something. When we get to 2,000 downloads, I'll do 2,000 push-ups.
All right.
Better get to downloading. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.